The Compound. Revelation. Chapter 1. The glass walls of the Silicon Valley tech office gleam under the California sun. Maya sat at her desk, lines of code reflected in her trendy cat-eye glasses. As a senior analyst at the hottest big data startup, she was used to solving complex problems with the latest technology. But today, her focus wavered. She glanced at the photo tacked to her computer, her and James at a Giants game last month. His arm draped across her shoulder, grin boyish as ever. Maya smiled, thinking of his infectious charm. They'd been dating 6 months, and she was still finding new sides to him. Who knew a venture capitalist could be so down to earth? A chat notification popped up from James. "How's my favorite data whiz? Excited for this weekend? The fam can't wait to meet you." Maya's stomach fluttered. She was thrilled James wanted her to visit his family's estate for their annual gathering. A chance to get to know his elite relatives and gain their approval. She knew he came from wealth. You didn't summer in the Hamptons without deep pockets. But seeing it firsthand on his family's private island would be new territory. She didn't exactly come from money herself. Her single mom worked long hours managing a hair salon to pay Maya's college tuition. They'd always lived paycheck to paycheck in their snug townhouse. Maya was proud of her self-made success, but couldn't help feeling insecure around James' privileged world. This weekend could change everything, though. Impressing his family might lead to... Maya glanced at her bare left hand. No need to get ahead of herself. First thing was fitting in at the gathering, even if she felt out of place. She finished up a query and hit send, leaning back in her chair. Was she really prepared for a weekend of yacht parties and late-night cigar lounges? It was too late to back out. The seaplane left tomorrow. She was ambitious and determined to rise to any occasion. And deep down, the uncertainty thrilled her. Let the adventure begin. Chapter 2. The seaplane's engine roared as they raced down the tarmac. Spray misted through the open side windows, salting Maya's face. In the seat beside her, James grinned and pointed to the green dots emerging on the horizon. There she is, our family's crown jewel. Maya followed his gaze. The humps of land lengthened into rolling green hills ringed by white sand beaches. In the center, behind high stone walls, sat a sprawling ivory mansion. Your family's private island, Maya said in awe. It's its own world. James laughed. When great-great-grandpa struck oil, he wanted a refuge for the family, and now the compound is our own little paradise. The plane banked towards the island, dipping low over sapphire waves. Maya's heart quickened as details came into focus. Guest houses overlooking the sea, tennis courts tucked into jungle, a dock crowded with personal sailboats. A staff in white uniforms waved from the rooftop helipad. She turned to James with a teasing look. You know, when you invited me to meet your family, you maybe should have mentioned the private island. He raised his hands defensively. I didn't want you getting distracted by all this. He gestured at the approaching opulence. It's still just my crazy relatives, after all. Maya laughed as they touched down on the landing strip. Crazy relatives who happened to own their own island. The plane taxied past sprawling banyan trees and lush gardens, pulling up steps from the main house. James helped her down onto the tarmac. Welcome to the family. He spun her dramatically and kissed her, the island breeze tossing his chestnut hair. A rumble made them turn as a sleek yacht cruised into the bay trailing wake. First arrivals, James said. Here we go. He guided her by the hand to greet the docking boat, which turned out to bear his uncle's family. They air-kissed Maya's cheeks in turn and complimented her stylish sundress. Overwhelmed, she reminded herself why she had come, to win over James' kin. This weekend was her chance to take their relationship to the next level. Chapter 3. Maya soon learned there were two factions of James' sprawling family. The older generation led by his father, who still headed the biotech company his own father had started. And James' generation, the younger cousins who stood to inherit the corporate empire one day. Dad and Uncle Felix are in a blood feud for control of the board, James explained over lunch on the Grand Terrace. It's been raging for years. Maya nibbled a cucumber sandwich, eyeing the sweeping view of endless sea and sky. She still couldn't grasp the wealth on display, from the Michelin chefs in the kitchen to the army of gardeners manicuring each palm tree. Why the power struggle? She asked. Isn't your dad still chairman? James grimaced. He is, but he's getting on in years. Uncle Felix thinks it's his turn to run the company. He made a bid for majority shareholder, and Dad blocked him. Things have been icy ever since. Maya pondered this corporate intrigue as she sipped jasmine tea. Before meeting James, she'd paid little attention to his family's biotech firm, Silex Corp. She knew they were pharma industry giants, with fingers in genetics research and cutting-edge therapies. But the actual business dealings were unclear. She glanced sideways at James, his handsome profile haloed by the setting sun. If one day he stood to lead Silex Corp, shouldn't she understand exactly what they did? The thought intrigued her, learning the secrets behind their wealth and power. A young woman's voice made her turn. Sorry, am I interrupting? Maya took in the new arrival, her airy linen dress and casually windswept blonde hair. The family resemblance was obvious. This is my cousin Sophia, James said. He stood to embrace her warmly. Sophia gave Maya a conspiratorial grin. I see they've roped you into the family circus too, huh? Hope James hasn't scared you off already. Her laugh was musical and light. Maya liked her immediately. She seemed less pretentious than the other relatives. They launched into easy conversation about life in the Bay Area, and James left them to catch up with childhood friends arriving by boat. Finally, Maya had found someone real she could connect with here. As evening descended in a violet haze, she decided this weekend might not be so daunting after all. Chapter 4. Maya awoke to sunshine streaming through gauzy curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was, and then it came rushing back. The private island, James' sprawling family. She padded across cool marble floors to slide open the terrace doors. Outside her guest house, waves lapped gently on a secluded cove. The sunset gathering last night had been a whirlwind of meeting relatives. Faces and names blurred together over cocktails on the mansion's ocean view patio. She felt woefully underdressed amongst the Chanel and Dior until Sophia reassured her. Forget them, she whispered, referring to James' elder aunts in silk dresses. You look beautiful, and I love that jumpsuit. Later around the fire pit, James' father raised a toast to the family's summer reunion. To being together again at our home away from home. I'm glad the compound can still lure you all from your exciting lives. His brother Felix remained silent, only raising his glass when prompted. There was tension there, as James had indicated. But Sophia rescued Maya from the stiff formality, distracting her with gossip. Don't worry, it's always awkward until the wine flows. Then everyone lets their hair down. She giggled, her smile reflecting the flames. Maya hoped she could stick close to her new ally this weekend. Sophia clearly knew the family dynamic and could help Maya navigate it. She seemed so refreshingly candid compared to the other poised relatives. Late into the night, Maya finally grew tired of the familial politics and retreated to her guest room, falling asleep to the sound of waves. She was glad for a fresh start this morning. She dressed and strolled the path leading to the main house. They served breakfast on the east veranda, looking out over slopes of emerald lawn. She filled her plate from baskets of baked goods and tropical fruit. Even the jam came from the island's orchards. Sophia waved her over to a lounge area on the veranda. Come sit, we have so much catching up to do. Maya gratefully sunk into a cushioned chair. Over yogurt parfaits, Sophia shared amusing stories about summers spent here as a girl. How she and James would sneak off on sailing adventures against her father's wishes. We had the run of the place back then. Now Dad's always working, even here. Sophia rolled her eyes in annoyance. What exactly does your dad do at Silex Corp? Maya asked, seizing the opening. Sophia raised her eyebrows and glanced around dramatically. You mean you don't know the family business? She leaned in, dropping her voice. It's all anyone talks about every year. The boardroom drama, company gossip, don't worry. I'll catch you up. Maya smiled. This could be her chance to finally understand James' world. Chapter 5. Later that afternoon, Maya and Sophia lounged on cabana chairs by the sprawling family pool. Maya had spent the morning being thoroughly indoctrinated by Sophia on all things Silex Corp. So the company specializes in genetics? Maya asked, wanting to clarify the lengthy lesson. Sophia nodded, sipping a peach iced tea. Yep, cutting-edge stuff, mapping genomes, cloning DNA, engineering stem cells, the basis for tons of new drugs. It sounded highly complex, though the applications for healthcare intrigued Maya. Still, some projects raised ethical questions. Have they ever experimented on humans? She asked hesitantly. Sophia's expression turned serious. I've wondered the same thing. All Dad says is their work follows regulations, but the rumors. She trailed off ominously. Footsteps sounded on the paving stones and James appeared in his swim trunks. Found you two, mind if I join? He sprawled on the chaise lounge beside Maya and planted a quick kiss on her cheek. We were just discussing the joys of genetics over cocktails, Sophia said lightly, tilting her glass one way, then the other. James laughed. I should have warned you. Sophia loves gossiping about the family business. Don't take it too seriously. He lowered his sunglasses and met Maya's eyes. I know you're curious, but tread carefully. Some topics are sensitive. Maya bristled at the warning as James squeezed her hand. She understood family matters were complex, but his tone irked her. She wasn't a child to be scolded. Sophia shot her a sympathetic look when James left for a swim. Ignore him. The company's shady side is totally fair game. She winked and topped up Maya's drink. Maya smiled. Well, I did want the inside scoop from this weekend. They toasted their glasses. Maya appreciated Sophia welcoming her questions instead of stonewalling like James. The more she learned about Silex Corp, the deeper she wanted to dig. Over dinner on the veranda that night, she cautiously brought it up again. Sophia gave me the rundown on Silex Corp's projects. the genomics work you're doing could really change medicine. James nodded, looking wary, while his father chuckled. Don't believe everything my niece says. She never did pay attention to the science or business end. We're trying to improve people's lives, plain and simple. He radiated smooth confidence, and Maya sensed this wasn't the moment to pry further. But she filed away his dismissiveness. There was more to uncover about how exactly the family business operated, and she was determined to find out. The truth had to be more complex than either James or his father let on. Later on the moonlit beach, James drew her close and whispered, "Let's not talk business this week. I just want to enjoy our time together." Before she could reply, he was kissing her under the stars. Maya let the subject drop, but her curiosity only grew. She knew which side she was on, Sophia's. Chapter 6. Over the next few days, Maya settled into island life. Mornings were spent lounging by the pool before the afternoon heat drove them to the shade of the verandas. Evenings brought family dinners, music in the grand hall, stargazing on the rooftop. She learned the routines of this insular world. James remained busy with work calls, even on their tropical getaway. Being a VC never stops, he complained one afternoon when he had to cut short their picnic on the beach. Maya didn't mind the alone time. She knew real business was being done here despite the resort facade. Power brokers were still power brokers on vacation. When James was occupied, she tagged along with Sophia and her cousins on various adventures. Snorkeling the reef, cliff jumping into crystalline coves, exploring sea caves by kayak. It let Maya glimpse more of their sprawling island domain. One night, after a particularly daring cliff dive, they laid on towels gazing up at the dazzling Milky Way, depleted. Sophia pointed out the family's constellation, Orion, the hunter. Legend says he was banished to the sky for offending the gods, she whispered dramatically. Her face shone in the starlight. Maya smiled at her flair for storytelling. Is that why your dad bought an island too, to get away with offending people? Sophia's laugh rang out. You're catching on quick. She propped herself up on one elbow. But sometimes getting away with something takes going even farther than this, remember that. Maya raised her eyebrows, but Sophia had already moved on, convincing the group to sneak back for a midnight dip in the hot tub. Maya laughed and raced after them across the sand, Sophia's cryptic words forgotten. The next evening, Maya sipped rose on the deck with James, traced back the star path she'd memorized. Sophia says your family is like Orion, banished up there. James chuckled. She would. Dad always said myth and fable were wasted on my cousin. His tone gave Maya pause. What do you mean? He shrugged, refilling their glasses. Let's just say Sophia's imagination runs away with her at times. I'd take her stories with a grain of salt. Maya bristled again at the insinuation. She's been welcoming to me this week when others haven't. Including him, she didn't add. James looked wounded. Hey, I wanted you here with me, but these corporate disputes get complicated. He wrapped an arm around her, voice softening. Just trust me, bae. Maya let him draw her close as the ocean breeze whispered through the palms. She felt his breath stir her hair as they swayed to soft music from the great room. Maybe James was just being protective and cautioning against family gossip. The doubt still nagged at Maya. She needed to keep observing and come to her own conclusions. Where exactly did people's loyalties lie? Chapter 7. The next morning, Maya left James sleeping soundly, and slipped out past the fluttering curtains. After days relaxing, she needed to stir up some answers. Sophia's words echoed in her mind. Getting away with something takes going even farther. She wandered down garden paths still glistening with dew, the sunrise staining the horizon pink and gold. What were they getting away with here on this island sanctuary? Time to do some investigating of her own. The central mansion stood silent, without even a gardener pruning the hedges yet. Maya tried a side door and found it unlocked. She crept inside, moving slowly so her footfalls wouldn't echo on the marble floors. The east wing held sitting rooms and libraries. Maya scanned the shelves and desks, looking for anything enlightening on the family business. She found schedules of shareholder meetings and acquisition plans, but nothing immediately incriminating. Voices echoed down the hall from the morning room. Maya ducked behind the grand piano just as Jane's father entered with his brother Felix. Their hushed argument carried in the high-ceiling space. "The board will shut down any more of your reckless grabs at control," Jane's father said sharply. "This company belongs to my side of the family." His brother hissed in reply. "The board won't have a choice once they see the test results from my new clinical trials. By next quarter, I'll have the support to force you out." Their footsteps receded again down the corridor. Maya's pulse raced. She'd gotten a tantalizing clue, but didn't fully grasp the context. She needed to dig deeper. She found her way to the office wing. A directory listed satellite research labs around the globe. One entry read simply, "The Clinic, Honduras." Maya searched her memory of Sophia's lessons. The family had avoided any Central American holdings due to political instability there. This struck her as deeply odd. She ducked under rose-covered trellises to hide herself from the groundskeepers. Kneeling beneath the fragrant blooms, she pulled out her phone. A quick search brought up no public records of a Silex Corp facility in Honduras. The private island clinic certainly seemed to be off the books. Maya stood and dusted off her linen pants, mind racing. She needed to tell Sophia what she'd uncovered right away. She found a gardener tending the path back to her guest house and had him relay an invitation to Sophia to have morning spa treatments. That would give them an excuse to talk privately. An hour later, they sat wrapped in plush robes as a massage therapist worked on Sophia's shoulders. Maya kept her voice low so it wouldn't carry in the open-air treatment room. "Your uncle mentioned new clinical trials that are key to taking over the company, trials happening at a secret Silex Corp clinic in Honduras." She watched Sophia carefully for her reaction. Sophia tensed and sat up straighter. She met Maya's eyes in the mirror, looking troubled. "I don't know anything about that, but if they're hiding major medical trials..." Maya nodded gravely. "It means they're likely unethical, testing risky procedures they can't legally do in the States." The masseuse finished Sophia's massage and stepped out. Once alone, Sophia turned to Maya, twisting her robe sash. "This goes deeper than I realized. You're sure about this clinic?" At Maya's solemn nod, she ran a hand through her waves. "Damn. I know my dad can be cutthroat, but medical ethics were always sacred to him." "Maybe he doesn't know the truth," Maya suggested gently. Sophia shook her head. "No, he must be involved if it's tied to control of the company." Her expression darkened. "My father and uncle both. I've heard rumors for years about their feud turning ugly, but I never believed." She trailed off, gazing out the open window where the sea glittered under a cloudless sky. When she turned back to Maya, her eyes flashed with anger. We need to find out what's really going on at this clinic. If they're endangering lives for profit, we can't stay silent." Her jaw was set with determination, and Maya nodded firmly in agreement. They couldn't discuss it further as the massage therapist returned, but a pact now existed between the two women. Maya had found more than she bargained for in unraveling the family's secrets. Still, she knew the stakes were too high to back down now. Chapter 8. In the days that followed, Maya and Sophia kept up pretenses. Lounging casually with James by the villa pool, joining family dinners that stretched into the night, they hid their growing suspicions. But in moments alone, their talk turned urgent. "We need proof about this clinic," Sophia insisted one afternoon as they walked the garden paths. Flower-scented air felt suddenly sinister. Maya agreed. "It may require more aggressive investigating, but we're running out of time." The weekend gathering was ending in 2 days. Any secrets at the Honduras facility would disappear along with the guests. That night, Maya begged off accompanying James to the observatory, claiming exhaustion. In truth, she needed to search the mansion again while the family was distracted. She waited an hour after dinner to be certain everyone had moved to the east wing for drinks and stargazing. Slipping in through the side door, she swiftly moved towards the offices she'd scouted that first morning. The clinic files had to be here somewhere. Moonlight cast shadows across the statuary and art lining the marble corridors. The offices were eerily still, only the ticking of a grandfather clock breaking the quiet. Maya hurried to the finance director's office and booted up the computer. She inserted the flash drive she'd borrowed from Sophia, loaded with programs to break encryption and bypass passwords. But the files that loaded were simply corporate accounting data, no medical records. She searched the bookshelves next, scanning each title and binder. On a top shelf, she discovered a false back that triggered open at her touch. "Bingo," she whispered. But the cubby simply held a bottle of aged scotch, no confidential documents. Footsteps in the corridor cut through the silence. Maya's breath caught. She hadn't locked the office door. She glanced desperately around for a hiding spot. Voices neared, one she recognized as James' father. Maya dove under the massive oak desk, just as the office door creaked open. These so-called trials had better deliver results. The voice was tense with anger. Another man replied, "The latest human data is very promising, but we shouldn't discuss it here. Too many open ears." Their polished shoes tread around the office as they seemed to gather items. Maya squeezed her eyes shut and prayed they wouldn't notice the open computer or disturbed bookshelf. After a few agonizing minutes, she finally heard their footsteps retreat and the door click shut. Letting out a shaky breath, she crawled from her hiding spot. The intruders had taken any useful files with them. Maya had never felt so vulnerable and exposed. Something sinister was definitely unfolding in the depths of the company, and unknown enemies were covering their tracks. She would have to be more careful than ever. Slipping back outside, she hurried through the moonlight to share her disturbing findings with Sophia. If they wanted the truth, they would need help beyond just each other. Chapter 9. Maya woke the next day feeling like a fugitive in her own borrowed bedroom. Evidence of the family's lies was right in front of her if only she could access it. The drive to uncover the truth hummed in her veins. She pulled out her encrypted laptop and messaged 2 coworkers she trusted back in Silicon Valley, Raj, a brilliant engineer, and Nina, her head of analytics. If anyone could quietly mine data and networks for intel, it was them. She gave scarce details, only that she needed help finding info on Silex Corp's international clinics. Nina replied swiftly, ever on top of anything work-related, even on weekends apparently. Interesting project. Let me reach out to my data contacts abroad. Raj seemed surprised by the vague request, but agreed to discreetly check Silex Corp systems for security flaws. Maya exhaled, relieved to have set those wheels in motion. She gazed out past the villa's sunlit terrace to the glittering ocean. How could this paradise hide such darkness at its center? The island's beauty now seemed deceiving, even menacing. They were all complicit in hiding the truth. James bringing her here to witness his family's charade, not warning her about their unethical core. She suddenly felt like a pawn in a larger game. A tone sounded from her laptop, and she glanced down to see an encrypted message from Sophia. Meet tonight after the farewell bonfire, East Guesthouse Veranda, 11 p.m. We need to talk. Maya quickly deleted the message. She had hoped to confide in Sophia about contacting her coworkers. But Sophia's furtiveness made her hesitate. She would keep that intel to herself, for now. Trust had to be earned at this point. Dressing in an airy sundress, she headed to the patio for a lunch of grilled lobster and champagne. The family buzzed about last-minute island adventures and fond memories. Maya plastered on a smile while nerves twisted her stomach. Casual laughter rang out as James recounted college exploits with his cousins. Maya watched him wield easy charm with relatives and staff alike. He seemed entirely at home among the island's splendor, with no clue anything was amiss. He caught her eye and winked. She quickly looked away. How could she ever view him the same after what she'd uncovered? The James she thought she knew was maybe the greatest illusion of all. Her trust in him had cracked apart, impossible to repair. Maya had come here to gain his family's acceptance. Now she just needed to safely get away. Chapter 10. At evening, Maya attended the Clambake rooftop after party in a haze of distrust. She stayed close to crowds, never isolated with James or anyone else who might see through her act. Laughter and music flowed around her, but she felt acutely alone. Nearing 11 p.m., she slipped downstairs while partygoers were occupied lighting paper lanterns. Crossing the moonlit lawn, she stuck to tree shadows to avoid notice. At the East Guesthouse, she scanned for any observers before climbing the wooden steps. Sophia sat curled on a rattan sofa, gazing out to sea. Tropical flowers scented the night air, but Maya still breathed easier in the open patio than inside. You wanted to talk privately? She kept her tone casual as she took a seat across from Sophia. The surf rumbled distantly over the rocky point. Sophia leaned forward, brow knitted with concern. I'm worried, Maya. We made a huge mistake investigating my family, and I don't know how to make it right. Maya froze. This wasn't at all what she expected. What are you talking about? We're so close to the truth about your father's company. We can't back down now. Sophia shook her head firmly. You don't understand it. These people will do anything to succeed if they see us as threats. She trailed off, eyes haunted. Maya felt her distrust flare up. If you're having second thoughts, just say so. I'm still committed with or without you. Sophia recoiled at her sharp tone. I just want us both to be safe, please, Maya. For our own good, we need to stop. She reached across the table imploringly, but Maya stood and stepped back. I don't scare that easily, but if you won't help, don't get in my way. She turned on her heel before Sophia could respond, pulse pounding as she strode into the night. The path back to the mansion wove through elegant gardens and stands of palms. Maya hurried past the flickering tiki torches, needing distance from the cloying party. She was halfway across the broad lawn when the sprinklers suddenly hissed to life. Maya cried out as she was drenched in seconds by the powerful spray. She covered her head in vain and slogged on, makeup running, dress sopping wet. Finally reaching the side entrance, she rinsed off in an outdoor shower before padding inside, shoes squelching. She dripped up the grand staircase to her room, shivering as she changed into dry pajamas. Settling into an armchair, she finger-combed her knotted curls. The attack seemed juvenile, but the intent was clear. Someone had noticed her late-night rendezvous with Sophia and wanted to send a warning. Maya's fear battled her resolve. She knew the family would try to intimidate her into compliance. But she refused to become another silent player in their charade. The truth would come out, no matter the risk. She climbed into the plush bed, images of medical crimes swirling through her mind. "This isn't over," she told herself firmly as she drifted into uneasy dreams. "I'm not giving up now." Chapter 11. The next morning, Maya awoke feeling watched. She peered out the window, half expecting to spot security guards or groundskeepers monitoring her. But only tranquil gardens met her gaze, flowers swaying gently in the ocean breeze. She shook off the paranoia. It was normal to feel on edge after last night's unspoken threat. But she wouldn't let them drive her out with scare tactics. Down at the villa dining patio, families were already gathered for their final breakfast. No one appeared to be whispering about Maya behind coffee cups or conspiring in corners. She hesitantly joined the buffet line, relieved when conversations flowed around her as usual. James brought her a mimosa with an affectionate squeeze. "Last day in paradise, the seaplane comes this afternoon." Maya tensed. The thought of stepping onto that plane under the watching eyes of family members made panic rise in her throat. But she swallowed it down and forced a smile. "This trip went too fast," she said lightly. "I never even made it through half the books in the library. Make them think you're just another distracted guest." James laughed. "I knew you'd love it here. We'll have to come back sometime." Maya's chest tightened at the innocent suggestion. Slipping away to her room, pretexting packing, breaths grew short and quick. The walls seemed to tilt and sway around her. Blindly, she groped the side table for her pill bottle and shook out an extra dose. She focused on slowing each inhale and exhale until the vertigo passed. Damn them and their head games. She wouldn't be bullied into having some breakdown. She still had a plane to catch. Hours later, she stood composed on the helipad with guests waiting to board. The seaplane was being loaded with luggage for its last run to the mainland. James chatted with his cousins, but Maya barely heard them. Her focus turned inward, assessing dangers and plotting contingencies. This wasn't over. She might have to exit the plane covertly if they tried detaining her. She mentally prepared to flee the airstrip and contact Raj to extract her. They wouldn't catch her off guard again. "Ready, sweetheart?" James touched her shoulder and gestured to the boarding steps. Maya braced herself and stepped into the fuselage behind his aunts and uncles. No one tried to stop her. She gripped her armrests so tightly her nails dug in as the plane accelerated down the runway. But the takeoff was smooth, the island dropping away below them. Maya watched it shrink into just a sparkling emerald in the vast turquoise sea. They hadn't won. Her secrets were safe. She let out a shaky breath of relief, as they climbed above sun-drenched clouds, headed back towards civilization. Chapter 12. Back on solid ground, Maya retreated to the safety of her Silicon Valley condo. She needed time to regroup after the island ordeal and consult with her coworker allies. Sophia kept calling and messaging, but Maya declined each attempt to talk. She couldn't tell yet whose side Sophia was really on. Instead, she debriefed with Raj and Nina on their efforts to access Silex Corp intel. Neither had uncovered much so far. The company's firewalls were ironclad. "I can try breaching their network directly, but it's risky," Raj said over her encrypted speakerphone. "Getting traced back to us could raise red flags." Maya considered this. Silex Corp's cyber defenses wouldn't just red flag intruders, they would move to eliminate the threat. The stakes were climbing higher each step she took. "Let me know if you come across any weaknesses, but be careful," she finally told Raj. They signed off, the faint click of the call disconnecting echoing in Maya's quiet condo. She stared blankly around at her minimalist decor, as familiar now as a stranger's home. Had she really been so naive just weeks ago? Trusting James' charming veneer and easy smiles? She thought of the first moment she saw the island, emerald and sapphire rising from the sea. Its beauty hid so many secrets and lies. James had hidden the truth from her just as carefully. Her phone buzzed with another message from Sophia. Maya silenced it with a swipe. Even her supposed ally was now suspect. She had only herself to rely on. The truth she sought had the power to take down Silex Corp's elite leaders. They would protect their corporate empire by any means necessary. Keeping her safe would mean outmaneuvering adversaries who had endless resources. She finally understood the true stakes at play. This was no longer just uncovering unsettling secrets for principle's sake. Exposing Silex Corp now required protecting herself from very real threats, from reputation ruin to actual bodily harm. James' family had proven they would intimidate and deceive to protect their power. Maya's investigations had to remain invisible as she gathered evidence strong enough to take public. Until then, she would appear cooperative and docile on the surface. But silently, relentlessly, she would keep digging no matter the risk. Chapter 13. Over the next week, Maya maintained a facade of normalcy at the office and with James. She split evenings between happy hours with coworkers and romantic dinners with him, keeping conversations light. James remained affectionate and unsuspecting, chatting about work and suggesting future getaways. "Back to reality after our island escape," he laughed. Behind his easy smile, Maya sensed they no longer occupied the same reality. Hers now held shadowy threats he couldn't even imagine. At home, behind encrypted firewalls, she continued working with Raj and Nina discreetly. They combed through the dark web and obscure databases abroad, searching for traces of the Honduras clinic. All they found were dead ends as shell companies shielding the true facility owners. Meanwhile, Silex Corp announced an exclusive partnership on breakthrough gene therapy research. Maya knew it linked to whatever clinical trials they were covertly running offshore. "This press release gives us a money trail to follow at least," Nina said during an encrypted call. "If we can pinpoint where research funding is really going, it may lead to the clinic." Maya felt them closing in with each new data point. But the familiar dread lingered. One misstep could provoke retaliation. "Stay cautious with your investigating," she urged again before signing off. The whispers clouding her mind wouldn't quiet. Each day the walls seemed to creep closer around her. When the darkness encroached at night, she lay awake, rigid in bed. Endless scenarios played out: a security men dragging her from home, a staged suicide, and falsified coroner's report. Each day she went through the motions while secreting away all evidence of her continued investigation. Offshore accounts were proving frustratingly difficult to trace. But Nina caught a key detail: a gene therapy payments funneled through a law firm known for shady international deals. They were so close to hard proof now. Maya knew she needed to stay disciplined and buy just a little more time. At home, she went through the motions: yoga classes, preparing healthy meals, calling her mom. To the outside eye, her life was enviably routine. Meanwhile, her encrypted notes expanded daily, cataloging Silik's family sins spanning decades. The magnitude of damage they'd caused began coming into focus. This secrecy had to end. At night, when dreams turned dark, Maya retreated to her makeshift sanctuary. Blankets draped over chairs created a cozy nest surrounding her bed. String lights cast a soft glow to keep the shadows at bay. Here, she could let down her guard and breathe freely, if only for a few hours. Late one night after a call with Nina, Maya woke to a metallic scraping outside her condo door. Heart seizing, she grabbed the baseball bat under her bed and crouched in the hallway, eyes straining in the darkness. Only silence followed. Gripping the bat tighter, she flipped on the exterior lights. No one lurked on the landing or stairwell. The sound didn't repeat. Warily, she re-engaged both locks and the chain, palms clammy. Back in bed, adrenaline still buzzing, she considered new security measures. Cameras, a strengthened door, a personal alert button. She realized with stark clarity the threats were creeping closer each day. Faith in law or reason couldn't protect her now, only fortifying this shelter. Finally, she drifted off as dawn light seeped in, bat still clutched in her hand. With each passing hour, the world outside looked more dangerous. But she would not be forced into retreat. The Silik's family wouldn't evade justice much longer. Maya would make certain of that. Chapter 14. Maya's circle of trust narrowed as she retreated further inward. Co-workers, friends, even her own mother, as she kept them all at a distance now. Contact was limited to brief check-ins, that everything was fine, busy with work. It was safest revealing little of her personal life. Only Raj and Nina remained part of her team, communicating in code or whispers. In a rare in-person meeting at a crowded cafe, Maya passed an encrypted flash drive across the small marble table. "Payment records as requested," Nina said briskly, pocketing the device in her sleek leather bag. "By tomorrow I should have the shell companies traced." She rose to leave right as her coffee arrived, barely touching it. Meetings were brief windows of borrowed normalcy, then back to muted urgency. Raj provided security updates, having installed hidden cameras surrounding Maya's apartment. "I rigged motion alerts to your phone if anyone gets on the property." He showed Maya the app dashboard on his tablet. "Thank you," she said fervently. These measures provided some reassurance, though she knew skilled adversaries had ways around them. Later at her office, an email from James pinged on her computer. He missed her and wanted to plan a weekend getaway soon. Maya's chest constricted reading his affectionate words, sent from a world now foreign to her. She typed back a vague reply, so much work piling up, she needed to take a rain check. Then she erased the message thread, as had become habit. She had to remain laser-focused without emotional distractions. James was intrinsically part of the very machine she worked to dismantle. Sophia remained the true enigma, friend, foe, or opportunist swayed by self-interest. Maya regretted the way they left things, but with stakes so high, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. For now, Sophia existed in uncertain territory, an X factor to be cautiously observed. Maya understood she was becoming more isolated and paranoid by the day. But utterly devoted allies were vital, ones who embraced the cause fully, even if that meant cutting ties with fair-weather friends. Sometimes freedom required sacrifice. She clung to that conviction as solitude threatened to overwhelm. The walls of her hidden sanctuary now felt less like a haven and more like a bunker. But she carried on late into each night, emboldened by righteous purpose. The light still shone brightly enough to guide her way towards justice over corruption, truth over lies, right over wrong. Maya kept it burning fiercely in sight. Chapter 15. While her public facade remained eager and social at the office, Maya's focus honed at home. She pored over leaked data points, strung them on her maze of encrypted notes like breadcrumb dots revealing shadowy patterns. Most nights she skipped dinner, too fixated to eat, fueled by adrenaline and ambition. This obsessive digging for truth became her only equilibrium. When her vision blurred from staring at code and spreadsheets, she paced her condo tracing timelines and financial webs on scribbled wall charts. The scattered dots were coalescing into damning pictures. Offshore accounts hidden in shell companies funneled money through bogus charities into Silex Corp's coffers. Payments allocated for agricultural development in Honduras disappeared into their secret facilities. Every data point potentially exposed another unethical turn. So far, they found no smoking gun, evidence directly linking experiments on humans to Silex leadership. But Maya focused on steadily assembling the mosaic of misconduct. Brick by brick, they would build the proof. At low moments, drafting another encrypted SOS to Raj and Nina, doubt crept in. Were they still too small to topple a giant? Some days her fervor wavered against the faceless corporate machine. But giving up meant Silex continued unchecked, exploiting innocence, deceiving governments, poisoning public trust. The system was broken, but Maya wouldn't be complicit by compliance. The only path forward was exposing ugly truths so change could dawn. James still messaged affectionately about weekend plans, but Maya pushed him off, claiming work emergencies. He was sweetly oblivious that she had slipped beyond his reach. This exposed cruelty festering inside his family would break James when he finally grasped it. Maya almost pitied him, once she had found him so charming. For now, he was just collateral damage in this deeper war for truth. Maya's old life of lazy Sundays with him, chatting over movies and takeout, had evaporated. Her new equilibrium was a soldier's restless nights, days fueled by duty alone. Each small victory, tracing an offshore account, breaking encryption, it kept her locked in this tireless march. The battlefield lines were etched clearly now. Good versus evil, light versus dark. And Maya stood firmly on the right side. Chapter 16. The breaking point came late one evening as Maya walked up to her condo. She glimpsed two suited men seated in an unmarked car parked across the street. They didn't react to her arrival, just sat silent behind tinted windows. Maya's breath caught, but she maintained her pace to the lobby door and rang Raj's encrypted mobile as soon as she was inside. "I'm being watched. Send help fast." "I'm on my way. Get somewhere safe and track their signal." Raj kept his tone calm and even. They had known this day would eventually come. Maya raced to the stairwell, rushing up 3 flights to a vacant unit Raj had scoped out. Crouched below the front window, she loaded an interceptor app to monitor nearby mobile communications. A text ping, secure channels moments later. 2 agents stationed in vehicle out front, no sign of perimeter breach yet. Maya exhaled, knees going weak. Raj had insisted on planting a bug in the car days earlier, over her objections that it was too risky. Now she said a silent thanks for his stealth. Huddled there in the dark, Maya weighed 2 impossible choices. She could wait here indefinitely for the agents to make a move or try escaping tonight before they seized more control. Both carried immense risk, but the decision was already made. Maya hadn't come this far by hiding. She texted instructions to Raj, rent a van 2 blocks over and wait for her signal. Destroy all equipment and files after she went off-grid. She would retrieve the backups once in the wind. Then Maya slipped out the service entrance and descended via side stairwells, clinging to shadowed walls. The night air was shockingly calm as she emerged blocks away and walked briskly towards Raj's idling vehicle. They drove the speed limit through sleeping suburban streets, every nerve alight. When they crossed the county line, Maya finally exhaled and looked over at Raj. "Thank you. I know what this risks for you." He simply nodded. They both understood there was no going back now. The dangerous chase was truly on. Raj dropped Maya at a nondescript motel booked under an alias. She would lay low here before making flight arrangements. Alone again in the dingy room, Maya sat motionless on the stiff bed. Adrenaline had drained away, leaving her spent. But under the crushing exhaustion lay a flicker of long-buried hope. After so many claustrophobic months corralling evidence, the time had come to release it into daylight. Chapter 17. Maya spent 3 days sequestered in the motel planning next steps. Nina helped arrange transport to a private airstrip where she could depart the country discreetly. Her photographs and identity were now flagged for monitoring across all transit hubs. "I know some refuge networks abroad," Nina said during an encrypted call. "They can hide you once you're overseas, no questions asked." Maya hesitated, thinking of her mom and normal life left behind. Even her Spartan motel room felt comforting compared to uncharted exile. Nina sensed her reluctance. "Getting the story out is what matters, and you won't be able to do that here with Silex tracking you." Maya knew she was right. Once handed off to the refuge group, she would begin selectively leaking evidence through obscure open-source sites. Blogs documenting human rights abuses, outlets exposing corporate misconduct, they offered protection of anonymity. Circling the wagons would amplify public outcry too great to ignore. Maya devoured takeout noodle bowls alone in her room, mentally preparing for disappearance abroad. She might never return home the same person. Stopping evil required sacrifice, she recited inwardly like a mantra. After sunset on the 3rd night, a rump-led gray sedan with tinted windows pulled into the motel lot. Maya peered through slit curtains as the driver stepped out. He wore faded jeans and a baseball cap pulled low. The sight sparked familiarity. Too late, Maya realized why. James stared up at her window, his handsome face now gaunt with desperation. Maya staggered back, chest caving in. How could he possibly have tracked her here? A knock sounded urgently on her room door as James called her name. Maya scrabbled for possessions and the flash drive of leaked data. She yanked open the bathroom window above the tub and tossed her bag outside. James pounded the door again, shouting for her to let him in. When she didn't respond, the lock rattled violently as he threw himself against it. Maya hoisted up and out the window, shimmying down into the damp bushes. Finally on the ground, she crouched lifeless for a moment, too stunned to run. How could he betray her so profoundly? The door splintered open behind her with a crack. James' ragged voice pleaded, "Maya, I'm trying to help you." At that, Maya took off, adrenaline infusing her limbs with speed. The sidewalks and parking areas blurred as she raced blindly through darkness. But she could hear James' footfalls closing in behind her. Rounding a corner, she dimly made out looming trees and darted off the pavement towards them. If she could lose him in the woods, her escape remained possible. Maya crashed headlong into the underbrush, branches lashing her cheeks. James' distant voice still called her name between heaving breaths. He was trained for pursuit, while she scrambled purely on instinct. Bursting into a small clearing, Maya collapsed against a trunk, chest burning. As James' uneven tread approached, she crouched inside a hollowed fallen tree and waited, lungs screaming. Chapter 18. Maya huddled in breathless agony inside the decaying log as James' voice echoed nearer. He was so close she could hear him wheezing, stumbling through brush. Any moment he would catch her scent or spot the lobelia blooming around her hiding spot. Her lungs were near bursting, but she didn't dare exhale. When James finally moved on, calling her name more faintly, Maya shuddered with relief. Gulping air, she assessed options. Going for the motel meant risking capture. But she had to retrieve her bag. Her whole investigation was on that flash drive. She would circle wide through the woods to avoid crossing James, then stealthily recover her things. Once she made it to Nina's extraction point, abroad she could rebuild momentum. Maya crept from her hollow and slept between trees, senses razor-sharp. The forest took on a new menace in darkness, but she forced calm and relied on her wits. Panic equaled surrender. Nearing the motel, she scouted carefully for any guards. Seeing the lot empty, she crept to her broken-in room and crawled through the bathroom window. Waiting inside, James seized her wrists. Maya cried out, kicking violently. He looked at her beseechingly. "I know you hate me, but let me get you to safety." Her pulse roared as she spat. "How did you track me down? Why sneak around in the woods?" His grip didn't loosen. James' face fell. "I tapped your phone weeks ago for your own protection, and I'm in as much danger now from my family as you are." Maya stilled, searching his eyes. The James she knew was not this haunted stranger. But he was still her mark, trained to deceive. She softened her voice. "If you want to help, let me walk out that door alone. It's the only way." James hesitated, then released her. Maya backed away slowly. At the doorway, she met his defeated eyes one last time before disappearing into darkness. Trudging through chilling woods, Maya questioned everything again. Her crusade, her methods, her sanity even. How had righteousness twisted so far? The refuge Nina promised tempted her more than ever now. Flee the questions coloring everything in murky gray, right, wrong, truth. Escape the painful past entirely. Maya realized her flight path cut straight by the airfield for outbound planes. Drawn by their promise of liberation, she approached the tarmac through the pines. A sleek white jet waited, door open, stares lowered. Nina stood expectantly at the base in her travel blazer. Behind her, the plane hummed with promise of a clean slate. But Maya only watched numbly from the tree line, making no movement. Finally, Nina's shoulders slumped. She withdrew alone into the cabin, and the door sealed shut. As the jet climbed skyward, Maya walked slowly back through the empty forest. The weariness of her fight settled fully in her bones, but no escape could cure it. The only way back was through. She stepped into the motel office phone booth. When James answered, she simply said she was ready to talk. They had a long-delayed reckoning to face, starting right here. Chapter 19. Maya sat across from James in a vinyl diner booth. She cradled black coffee, needing its bitter warmth. Between them sprawled all she had sacrificed: career, friends, ethics. The casualties of moral crusades. "I thought getting justice meant trusting no one," she began haltingly. "But really it was about stopping the fear. I let it convince me you were also the enemy." James nodded, his eyes mournful. "You were exposed to the worst in my family. I should have warned you sooner." Maya glanced outside at first light touching the pines. "I became ruthless pursuing truth. But what if there are more truths than I realized?" It frightened her saying this out loud. The waitress paused to refill their mugs. When they were alone again, James asked, "What do you mean?" Maya traced damp rings on the table. "Your father said the experiments saved lives. Could that actually be true?" Even partial facts exonerated no one, but the possibility chilled her. "I honestly don't know." James stared down into swirling darkness. "But I've seen records referencing trials, and it terrifies me." Maya let his honesty sit between them. She had single-mindedly built him up as an opponent when he was just as lost. "So where does that leave us?" she asked. James ran a hand through tousled hair. "I still believe we can expose the harmful secrets while doing some good, but we'll have to trust nuance now instead of absolutes." Maya's gut twisted hearing him echo her own newfound doubts. The world suddenly held such murky terrain. Could she accept wrongs committed toward right aims? Outside, the first streaks of sun stretched over the treetops, banishing night shadows. Maya finishing her coffee, now lukewarm and over-bitter. But still it anchored her in this imperfect reality, where no choice was purely noble. Finally, she met James' patient gaze. "Here's what I know. Secrecy corrupts absolutely, even with good intent, so we bring this all into the light." James let out a breath and gave one firm nod. The path was still unclear, but they would trace it together from here. Maya's doubts would never fully silence, but she refused to stand paralyzed while injustice continued unchecked. Perfection was the threshold of inaction. Chapter 20. Maya sat with her laptop and stacks of documents spread before her on the motel desk. Cataloging the full extent of evidence against Silex Corp required reliving the darkest parts of her investigation. Each file threatened to dredge up that all-consuming paranoia again. She took deep breaths and focused on facts, not her wounds. This was about justice now, not personal redemption. James entered, his footsteps heavy with their shared burden. "I confirmed my dad's flight to Cameroon today. We can raid his home office while he's away." Maya nodded, steeling herself. One final risky break-in to complete the full dossier. She may have rejected total war, but exposing concealed misconduct remained imperative. Once the ugly truth surfaced, justice could take its course. That night they idled down the block as James punched in the gate code at his childhood home. He led Maya through manicured grounds to the rear patio door. The alarm system blinked green, still disabled from his earlier sabotage. They hurried upstairs to a mahogany-lined study. Floor-to-ceiling bookcases stood imposing in the shadows. Maya switched on a small flashlight and went directly for the antique globe on the desk. She twisted it sideways to reveal a biometric lock. I hope he hadn't upgraded his little hidey hole, but we've got 60 seconds before this locks us out. She pulled out the putty mold of Mr. Silex's fingerprint. The safe opened with a muted click, revealing files and hard drives. Maya photographed the contents while James skimmed through documents. These latest human trials. He looked up, pale beneath his summer tan. We were right about the risks, offshore testing to avoid regulations. Maya's heart sank, though this was the conclusive proof she needed. Download everything. We'll go through it all later. They worked in tense silence until distant lights made them freeze. James hurriedly closed the safe just as voices carried from the garden. Flashlights raked the study windows. Someone must have reported the alarm failure already, James whispered. He crossed to the balcony doors and glanced out. Mercenaries, heavily armed. No way we get past them downstairs. Maya's mind raced. Is there access to the rooftops from here? James considered, then nodded. The old servant's stairs lead up. He led her to a nondescript door cunningly disguised in paneled walls. Narrow steps climbed into musty darkness. They emerged onto slate roofing concealed behind a peaked gable. James pointed to a trellis nearly overgrown with vines. That trellis reaches your terrace on the guest wing. Just watch for loose parts. Maya peered down the dizzying length of lattice and willed herself calm. She had to see this through, no matter the cost. Turning back, she grasped James' hand tightly. We finish this together. He squeezed firmly in return. Maya clung to the weathered frame, creaking and swaying down 2 dangerous stories. She refused to look down at certain death below. Reaching the guest terrace, she collapsed in relief. James landed deftly beside her. Together they stole into the night, heavy with sacrifice but free. Chapter 21. Maya clicked upload on the final redacted documents. Even anonymously, making these human trials public was a massive risk. But essential medicine shouldn't be developed in the shadows, no matter the profit incentive. Secrets corrupted, that lesson had stuck. Maya watched the progress bar creep forward, considering the long road that brought her here. Trusting the system would have left injustice festering silently. Real change required sacrifice, but also nuance. Her methods were flawed, but the purpose remained. Seeing the files publish at last, she whispered, done, to James waiting beside her. He exhaled raggedly and pulled her into a fierce hug. They had finally exposed the worst of the family rot, but this was just the first step. Truth now had to do its work. Over the next days, Silex denounced the leaks as falsified. But journalists corroborated Maya and James' claims, uncovering patient records and staff accounts detailing risky, unethical trials. Protests erupted, investors pulled funding, politicians launched investigations. The unstoppable tide of public outrage over Silex's abuses soon forced resignations at the highest levels. James' father stepped down amidst renewed scrutiny on offshore testing regulations. The sweeping fallout confirmed Maya's belief that concentrated power needed accountability. But the personal toll weighed heavily too. James became estranged from relatives who couldn't forgive the perceived betrayal. Maya wondered if she also had betrayed some greater good in the fervor of her crusade. The resolutions remained messy, imperfect. But a cautious hope was emerging from the ruins and revelations. James used his board C to steer Silex toward more ethical practices, aligning profit incentives with patients' best interest. Maya co-founded an oversight non-profit to sandbox risky biotech research from corporate greed and abuse. Their institutions inched haltingly towards moral realignment, transparency, accountability. 6 months out, the dust of their cataclysmic disclosures finally settled. Maya gazed out the window of her new office, considering all that had broken apart and transformed. The past could never be buried again. But she felt prepared now to meet each new day in the aftermath, with honesty, patience, and care. Chapter 22. Morning light filtered into Maya's bedroom, grazing the silvery scar across her shoulder. She traced its raised edge, remembering the night it marked, leaping the razor wire fence in her final, desperate escape from the compound. So many scars lingered inside as well, though less visible. Time continued its slow healing work. She found James drinking coffee in the kitchen, scrolling news on his tablet. He smiled as she hugged him from behind. "Morning, babe. Sleep okay?" "Better than usual," she replied, pouring a mug. Her nightmares had steadily grown less frequent. They ate breakfast side by side, in easy silence. The loft's brick walls and potted herbs made it feel homier each season. Their new life together remained a daily choice, despite past wounds. Maya now split her time between technology consulting gigs and the ethics nonprofit she co-founded. The cases they investigated ensured experimental science wasn't conducted dangerously off the books anymore. Each small protection against exploitation felt like a triumph. Meanwhile, James had successfully forced the Silex leadership overhaul. His dad remained on house arrest awaiting trial. The journey here was long, but he was finally restoring the family business to its original benevolent purpose. Maya was cautiously proud watching his redemption. Later that morning, she took the train to her nonprofit's office in downtown Oakland, mingling with workers grabbing lattes. The bustling normalcy of this routine often stirred gratitude in Maya. A year ago, obscurity and freedom seemed impossible. Now she moved unencumbered through the world again. At the office, her assistant Elena met her with reminders for the day's meetings and projects. Maya was reviewing the latest clinical trial oversight proposals when her phone rang. She tensed, instinctively seeing the Honduras country code. "Maya, it's Dr. Ruiz calling. I have news you'll want to hear in person. Can you come to the village clinic right away?" Maya glanced at her schedule. "I can be on a flight this afternoon." Something in the doctor's voice stirred the old battlefield instincts. She wouldn't ignore this summons. She booked the next plane to San Pedro Sula. 30 grueling hours later, Maya arrived at the remote mountain village. Dr. Ruiz greeted her eagerly, leading her on foot to a tiny open-air clinic. Inside, parents cradled silently skeletal children. Maya fought familiar nausea, the symptoms of Silex's experimental drug trials here. "I'm so sorry, I thought we caught all the dangers," she said, ashamed. "How can I help?" The doctor smiled gently. "This isn't your doing, it's something you actually helped cure." She guided Maya to a side room where health workers measured and examined more young patients. Dr. Ruiz handed Maya a medicine bottle labeled with Silex's insignia. An aid worker discovered discarded crates of these in the old company warehouse. Turns out it's the exact treatment these children need. Stunned joy pierced Maya's chest. After efforts to bury its abuses here, Silex had unintentionally done some good. One small redemption, but no less real. The flight home held a lighter spirit. Maya gazed down at mountains give way to patchwork fields, then a glinting Pacific horizon. The world defied easy labels of light and dark. But there was goodness to be found even in broken places if you knew how to look. She arrived back into James' grateful embrace, fuller from the reminder their imperfect labors still improved lives, sometimes in unexpected ways. The smallest act of conscience could redeem past wrongs. Epilogue. Maya rocked gently in the porch swing, gazing out over rolling vineyards. Her toddler daughter Lainey murmured softly on her lap, little lashes fluttering in sleep. At times Maya still marveled this serene life was hers. Screen doors creaked and James appeared with a tray of lemonade, kissing Maya's cheek before settling beside her. Together they slowly swayed in the drowsy afternoon heat. A pair of hawks circled leisurely above the valley. "Dad called today," James finally said. The board approved his release to home confinement. Maya absorbed this news. "How do you feel about it?" James considered. "Part of me celebrates justice being served, but part just misses the man who read me bedtime stories, who taught me to throw a curveball." He gave a sad chuckle, smoothing Lainey's fine hair. "I guess that's called being human." Maya nodded. She leaned into him reassuringly. "We're each made of light and shadows," she said softly, gazing out at the sun-dappled vineyards. A gentle breeze stirred the silver wind chimes, echoing her words. "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it frees us to walk in truth together." They sat contemplating the future, rebuilding awaiting them, with James' father, with Silex Corp, with their own family. The horizon remained clouded, but hopeful. Maya had learned to navigate life's grays and see redemption waiting within. She snuggled sleeping Lainey as the hawks circled patiently overhead. However gradual, healing would come for all who sought it. They had only to lift their eyes to the light waiting to find them. The end.